not adjust fast enough, we are going to have inflation in the last half of this year that is absolutely going to be higher than what we had in the early 80s, probably faster than what we had in the 70s. And that assumes that relations with the Chinese do not implode. If that happens, we're talking about World War II levels of inflation or more. Now, in the words of the Fed, this is transitory. You only move to Texas once. You only have to build a house once. You only have to move your supply chain once. But when they say transitory, unless they're lying to themselves, we're not talking here 6 to 12 months. We're talking 24 to 36, because this just takes time. Now, on the back end of that, we will have a disinflationary, not deflationary, disinflationary period where things kind of settle, and we'll have a more stable supply chain system that is mated with our labor force, which is mated with our energy costs because of shale, and it will all be much smoother. And at that same time, the Mexicans will have had a nice kick, and we'll enter the new era together on a much more stable footing. But the road from here to there has a lot of potholes and a lot of twists and turns, and that, of course, assumes that the Chinese go quietly into this good night. I'm going to be busy, and anyone who wasn't in this room to see this is going to be freaking out. So for those of you who are in the world of finance, you're going to have a lot of fun with that kind of understanding, I think. Because the panic in the markets as this all breaks down, as capital costs shoot up and everything moves around, you now at least have a bit of a roadmap. But I don't speak to really big groups. So have fun. Okay, anything on inflation before we like politics? Please.
So Shelley asked, given the assessment of the Chinese Navy, how do you feel about the recent computer modeled war?
Yo, look, we're going to get short this year. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, we're going to try and time it properly. You know what I mean? We're going to wait. We're going to wait until, like, you know what I mean, we really see some shit, like, bouncing off some motherfucking levels and shit. And we're going to get real short in this motherfucking market. I'm excited. We're going to make some goddamn money this year. Killing shit. We're going to crush some shit. Don't worry about that. You know what I mean? But let's keep rocking.
War games wherein the United States military said China won and it was really fast.
Yes. Okay. So what the Chinese military does is they don't count on their Navy in the traditional sense. So the US Navy is designed for long-range power projection and to keep the sea lanes open. That's not what the Chinese have done. They realize that they can't go head-to-head with the American Navy. So what they've done is a twofold thing. Number one, large number of land-based assets that launch short to medium-range missiles by the dozens, cruise missiles primarily. And then second, they have those same missiles on naval platforms, so they sail them a few hundred miles from shore and then send them out. The idea behind that war game is that the guidance from the president has not changed from what it was originally laid down in 1987. And that is the US is the sole naval power, and the Navy has the right to prance wherever it wants at any time in any volume. So every one of these war games, say the US Navy gets its ass handed to them, they're basically within sight of the Chinese mainland, which is idiotic in an actual conflict. If it does come to a war with Beijing, and I don't think it will, we'll just send a few destroyers into the Indian Ocean and interrupt their supply line for oil, and the whole country will collapse within 2 months. The Navy knows this, but that doesn't get you funding.
Yeah, so understand, like, this is very, very, like, important to understand for, like, all you, like, normies out here. When you hear about this type of shit, like, guys like Pete the Patriot will fucking feel to say this type of things, right? And Prank and whoever the fuck else, like, these people who, you know, don't really pay attention. The truth is like literally like, yo, all these are just talking points by like the Navy who wants a new boat, right? You know what I mean? It's like that fucking Cat Williams skit where like the broad's like, well, you know, with this computer, I'm having a hard time keeping up, daddy. He goes, bitch, every time a new iPad motherfucking thing comes, every time a new iPad comes out, you start talking that I need a new computer shit, right? You know what I mean? Like, yo, fuck, he's like, you better make that motherfucker work. Yo, that's kind of where the hell it is. That's what it is. They want a new boat. You know what I mean? They're like, ooh, I want a new boat. Let's stand here and try and, you know what I mean, make these motherfuckers give us a new boat. That's the mental, right? You know, it's sales pitch bullshit. You know what I mean? Like, it's fucking dumb, but like that's how the government operates.
So we have these war games where they get annihilated, and then all of a sudden, oh, it's a new carrier. That's basically the story. Now, there's a complication in there, and that is completely down to American diplomatic strategy, which is, let's just say, in flux. So the US can destroy China easily. But what about Japan, Korea, Taiwan, Philippines, you know, the countries that we historically have aligned ourselves with during the Cold War and the years since? If we care about them, maybe we should do a little bit more. But I think the American population has just decided that they're done for now. And these countries are on their own. Now, in a straight one-on-one war, I have no doubt that the Japanese can wipe the floor with the Chinese on the Deep Blue Sea. The problem is that Japan is not in the Deep Blue Sea. It's just off the coast within range of all of those missiles. So if it does come to a fight between Japan and China direct, the Japanese are going to bleed a lot, but the Chinese will be gone. Because if you start launching scores of cruise missiles into population centers, because unlike the United States, unlike China, Japanese population centers are in very small footprints. They're military facilities and economic facilities and physical infrastructure and densely populated condos all in the same spot. They don't have a lot of flat land. And so if you're going to go after the military, you basically have to take out the cities. And that means you're killing millions of people. China will never recover from that diplomatically, globally. And Japan would feel 100% justified in striking back however they felt. And I don't know if you guys have met a lot of Japanese in your life. They're wicked smart. And they could probably develop a deliverable nuke in about 4.5 hours. And once we get to that stage of the conflict, the conversation changes dramatically. Yeah.
Bernard would like to know your thoughts on China's control over key supplies, such as chip shortages, rare earth metals, and PPP, as well as the supply chain disruptions.
Okay, 3 very different answers. Let's start with PPP. PPP is really low-grade technology that was developed in the 1950s. The only reason we don't do it here is because it's cheaper to do it somewhere else. The technology is known. It's not expensive to put into place. Unfortunately, the facilities that do the masks are about 3 times the size of this room for one of them. It takes 4 months to put them in. Now, I've given Trump a couple of props on trade strategic policy. Time to take him down a notch. Oh my God. It's like he knew what COVID was going to do in February. Certainly knew in March. Absolutely knew in August. He didn't buy one. I mean, that was low-hanging fruit if there ever was one. Anyway, easy to get in if the decision is made. PPP, rare earths. Don't worry. Rare earths are a byproduct of any number of metal development processes. So the ore is not rare. It's called a rare earth because it's difficult to process. Not technically difficult, just chemically difficult. You have to go through a series of several hundred acid baths to purify each individual one, and that takes a few months. But there's nothing about it that's difficult. It was designed in the 1920s. Now, when the Chinese first threatened the Japanese 11 years ago with a rare earth cutoff, 2 things happened. Number one, the Japanese figured out how to get by with 80% less in less than 6 weeks. Like, the Chinese were subsidizing production, so we all had access to all the rare earths we could want. The industry of the world adjusted around that. As soon as the Chinese said something at all, we were like, ho, no, sir. So we figured out how to do with less. Every phone you have, every laptop you have, you know how they don't have those worrying hard drives anymore? That means they don't have very many rare earths in them anymore. So it pushed us in a new technological direction to get around that. Second, we started implementing 1920s technology in places like Australia and Malaysia and France and Texas. So there's more than enough physical capacity around the world to take over should the Chinese actually pull the plug. But as long as the Chinese are subsidizing it for everybody else, no one feels the need to spin up a facility. So if push does come to shove and the Chinese stuff does fall off the market, it's going to take 6 to 9 months to spin all that up, and then we'll be fine. And every person, every company that uses rare earths in volume already has like a year's supply in preparation for this. So it really is a hollow threat. And what was the third one? Chips? Sure. Okay. So the really, really, really crappy chips, the ones that you like put into a smart spatula, the Chinese do those. The medium end chips, the ones you put into a car, that's Thailand and Malaysia. And the high end ones that go into your laptops and your smartphones, that's Korea, Taiwan, and Japan. Now, one of the things, in my opinion, that both Trump and Biden have gotten wrong is like, we only want the good stuff. So we're going to put $300 billion behind a program to get the high-end chips back to the United States. I mean, that's all fine in technological leadership and blah, blah, blah. That doesn't solve the car problem. It's like, we're not having a problem with the high-end chips. That's just kind of an ego thing. So if we want to maintain the supply chain with automated EVs and automotive, we need to keep some sort of positive relationship with either the Malaysians or the Thais, preferably both, or find a way to build them in the Western Hemisphere. Now, the US has the technological capacity to do it. We're not very competitive because of the cost point, and the Mexicans don't have the precision educational system that's necessary to build out their own. So that would probably cost more than the $300 billion that Biden is putting behind the high-end stuff. So the high-end stuff, we're the country that designs these things. We know how to do it. We just choose to split up the labor pool because of cost purposes. Can't really do that with the mid-end stuff. You're just going to have to pay for it.
You gotta love those mic drop moments where motherfuckers just like, oh. Man, I love that shit. Legit, this is what I love about this dude. He's just like, yo, let me be real with you. Here's exactly what's going on. And like it's appreciative because like there's so much garbage ass information out here. When you hear the truth being told, like it's a breath of fresh air because he's not a Democrat, he's not a Republican. He's a globalist, right? You know what I mean? And like whether or not, you know what I mean, like I don't really care about his political ideologies. I care that he's coming from the aspect of what the business community is coming from, and that allows us to be able to better understand exactly what it is going on. If you get my mentality as a whole, right? Like I like being able to hear what these motherfucking like top end people are thinking. And that way, you know what I mean, like, when you hear some shit and it goes, oh man, what's that? Da, 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 da. Like it makes sure that like, oh, they're not like really being evil. They're just looking at it this way. And you can adjust yourself as need be. You know what I mean? That's kind of the mentality. Let's keep rocking though.
Russia and China.
I said, I'm curious, what is the relationship between Russia and China? Because you talk about China's Navy, but then I think Russia has a fairly substantial Navy. And so, okay, well, it's good to know.
When the Soviet system collapsed, the Russians were never a world-class naval power. They had some fun naval technology, especially with those mid-range cruise missiles, which I'm glad we never were on the receiving end of. But they really have built very, very few hulls since then. The Kursk disaster, if you remember that back in 2001, that was the only ship of size that they had built since the Cold War ended. Now, they have a few others, but they're crap. And so what the Russians did is they fell into their own ideology. We'll talk about this a little bit later. And they started believing that the United States cared about them. And in the aftermath of the Cold War, we really don't. So they cause problems for us wherever we can. We're always like, we're in Iran. Why are you here? We're in Bolivia. Why are you here? Well, to that end, they started sharing technology with the Chinese. And the Chinese did, they always do. They buy the floor model, they reverse engineer it, and anything they can do themselves, they do. And then the Russians lose their tech edge. So there's very little that the Russians can do anymore technologically that the Chinese can't match. And what few bits are left, they're still selling. So it's kind of a starvation diet. Now, the Russians and the Chinese do have one thing in common. Neither of them really like us very much. And as long as the United States is involved in the world, they will be on the same side, broadly speaking, diplomatically speaking, against us. But if the US steps back, they hate each other so much. The Russians in the past have conquered like the northeastern quarter of the country. They fought a brief war back in the 60s, which led to this, Soviet split. Under Yeltsin, they said publicly, feel free to try and take Siberia and all those resources. We can't defend it. We don't have enough people. We're just going to nuke you. They don't get along. And with the United States pulling back, a lot of these mutual antagonisms are going to start boiling up again. So they should enjoy their good relations while they have them. Yes?
Peter would like to know, if electric cars are the future, where will the industry find the lithium?
Yeah, well, I don't want to say that electric cars aren't the future, but lithium-powered electric cars are not the future. For those of you who remember your chemistry class from way back when, you would know that a lithium atom has only 3 atoms. Sorry, a lithium atom only has 3 electrons, 2 of which are locked into a lower orbit shell and cannot move. So there's 1 free electron per atom. That makes it the least energy-dense material on the planet, but one of only 2 that we know how to manipulate at that level. That's the only reason we're using it. Cobalt's much better. It has other complications, but we really need a new physical battery chemistry before we can talk about mass electrification of the transport sector. Put that to the side for the moment. Let's assume that I'm wrong and it's all lithium all the time. Most of the world's lithium either comes from Australia or Chile, and there are secondary deposits in Bolivia and Argentina. So they kind of follow the same math for steel and iron ore. It's mined in a place that's safe. It's processed in a place that's not. I would suggest that the processing is going to reshore to the United States.
This is important because, like, on a regular basis, I hear fucking people spouting. I don't know what conspiracy I'm assuming it was Alex Jones. Came up with a conspiracy theory. Oh, like, fucking Afghanistan has all this lithium and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, yo, shut the fuck up. It would literally cost you more to build the infrastructure to get this shit out than it would be worth to pull it out of their fucking ground. Like, it's the dumbest thing ever. Like, oh, we're going to go dig the Himalayan mountains up to get fucking lithium. Why? Australia, fucking Chile, Costa Rica, fucking Argentina. They don't have enough? Like, the fuck is wrong? Like, dummies. Shut up. You know what I mean? Like, yo, for fuck's sake.
Bernard has another question. Auto manufacturing is losing $100 billion this year due to chip shortages. Are there any quick fixes?
No. You have to build the facilities, and that takes time. Like a really cheap fab facility, like of the Chinese variety, is still $4 billion. The high-end ones, like the Intel facility down in Phoenix, that's like 15. Yeah, there's no quick way around that. Sorry. Yeah, it's like we retooled during COVID away from automotive towards consumer electronics. And they're trying to retool back, but you just can't move it that fast. I think we're all a little surprised at how fast we've emerged from lockdown in the last 2 months. Imagine doing that for a fab. It's because they can't start until they know where it's going. Now they know, give them 6 months. Okay, we got to go on. Do politics. Okay. Republicans and Democrats are evolving. So I think it's better to look at the factional makeup of the parties rather than to look at what we've come to think of as the normal alliances. So I like this matrix for that. If you're down at the bottom, you want the government to play some sort of role in regulating social norms. If you're at the top, you want the government out of your personal life. If you're over here, you think that the government should increase the tax take to remake society in some way. And if you're over here, you want the government out of your wallet. And we're all on this matrix somewhere. So for example, if you're down in this corner, social conservative but an economic liberal, it's guns, God, and Medicare. And if you're at the top left, an economic conservative and a social liberal, you think all of the country's bureaucrats should get together in Washington, D.C. and make the world's biggest nuclear weapon and set it off while they're there. Okay. Here's our traditional swing voters going back to the 1920s. Here is what we've come to think of as the Democratic coalition. Here are the Republicans. Here's everyone together. The single biggest impact that Donald Trump had on the American political spectrum is he elevated one faction that had almost vanished from American politics, the populists of the right. And based on whose numbers you're using, he brought 10 to 20 million voters in who had not participated in the last 4 or 5 presidential elections. Mobilized all of them into.
Well, don't get anything misunderstood. This is the Ron Paul crowd. So they did participate, but like they were basically told to go fuck themselves back in 08 and 2012. You know what I mean? It's just the last election, you know what I mean? Like they basically just didn't, well, the 2012 election, they told us to go fuck ourselves and we really didn't participate. You know what I mean? But like, we were there. We've been there, you know what I mean? But like, we're just, not really placated to. But Trump did, which is nice. Thank you.
Think that they're just simply going to vanish now that he's not president, I think is silly. Because they are now the single largest voting bloc, not in the Republican coalition, in the country. And they've had a taste of power, and they are not going back. But for everyone that Donald Trump brought in, he drove others away. The national security community found his foreign policies horrific. The fiscal conservatives looked at his first budget, were terrified, and then cried themselves to sleep in the corner after the second, the third, and the fourth one. The business community had a falling out with him over COVID. He wouldn't take any of their advice, and by the time we got to like May, he's like, I'm done, I don't care. And any federal action on the virus basically stopped. He drove them out of the party. He campaigned against them. But he also brought in some other factions. The unions liked the anti-free trade position. The Catholics had a split, with about a third of them going more secular and 2/3 almost becoming evangelical. And the Hispanics, people forget the Hispanics are among the most socially conservative groups in the United States. And 3rd and 4th generation Hispanics define themselves as white, and they are the most anti-immigration group on the entire American political spectrum. They love the idea of the wall. They became Republicans. Today, this is what the Republican coalition looks like. It is custom made for the culture war, but it can't read a map and it can't do math. The adults in the room, as we've thought of them, are gone. Trump melon scooped them out of the party structures. He kicked them out of the White House. He campaigned against them in Congress, and he removed them from the Republican Party apparatus. They're gone. I don't want to say that they can't come back, but it's going to be a serious uphill slog.
These are guys like Dan Crenshaw, Ted Cruz individuals. Like, these guys here, none of us like them. Right? We hate the fucking war hawks and the neocons. Like, every populist, every, right winger at this point, we all can't stand these fucking red flag waving motherfuckers. Fuck them. Just as an in general thing. Like, that's just kind of our mentality. They're institutionalists. They're military guys. And nobody, like, Machiavelli, I think, said it best. He said, be careful when you put, like generals and guys who are relying upon war around you, because, like, they're going to constantly just want fucking war. And that's their answer to fucking everything. Give somebody a hammer. Every problem has like a fucking nail. Like, yeah, fuck them.
On the left, Biden did the same thing to the hard left. Now, part of this is that Obama really hated the term woke and everything that it stood for, and he came back from retirement to campaign against it. A big part of it, I think, is Kamala Harris. I know that a lot of people on the right think she's this ultra-liberal. She was a freaking district attorney. She put a lot of people in jail. Her first trip down to Central America, she threatened everybody. She is more to the right on law and order issues than Republicans from the Watergate era.
Not wrong. She went down there and said, do not come. Stay here. We don't want you. And, like, I'll be honest, I can get behind that message. Just, I can't stand abroad as an in general thing. Like, nobody likes the way she conducts herself. But, policy-wise, other than her feminist bullshit, like, I don't really have a lot of disagreements with that type of shit. You know what I mean? Like, just putting it, putting it where it belongs. You know what I mean?
And the left hates her for it. Now, what that means is that these people and that guy are more hated among the Democratic institutionalists than the Republicans are. They've been pushed out of the committees. They've been pushed out of decision-making within the party. They particularly loathe Bernie Sanders because he just keeps campaigning as a Democrat and muddling the water so they can't get a good candidate. But if you look at where the decisions are actually being made, it's a seismic shift from what the Democratic Party looked like 10 and 15 years ago. We're in a situation today.
Baby boy Matt Gaetz. The baby boy. 17.
Where at commerce, transport, state, FTC, we have people with actual business experience. More business experience than the Trump cabinet. This isn't Obama 3.0, where the combined cabinet only had 5 years of private sector experience. This is a business-minded group. Left-leaning, of course. Are they redefining what the left means? Of course. So if you're opposed to their policies, that's fine. But don't think for a second that they're making this up as they go. They've actually trained for this for the last 12 years. The opposite is happening on the right. If you had told me 10 years ago that the Republican Party would have been unable to purge itself of not just vehement racists and accused sex traffickers and people who want to bring automatic weapons onto the floor of the Capitol.
Yo, let me keep this a buck, bro. Like, yo, I'm loving the dysfunction. Like, I got a little bit of an accelerationist in me. You know what I mean? Like, it is what it is. I thoroughly enjoy that shit. Like, yo, fucking nonsense. Tear it down. Let's burn this bitch to the ground.
But to have a former president who's not just still politically active, but is actively campaigning against other Republicans rather than going after the Democrats, I would have laughed. Because the Republicans were the party of adults. The adults are gone. Today's Republican Party, the last time I saw this internationally, was in Venezuela in the early 2000s. The Venezuelan Socialist Party, specifically. When internecine warfare and the willingness to use state power and even state violence against their political foes, not just across the political spectrum, but within their own institution, ripped the country apart. Now, I don't think we're going down that road, but I think the Republican Party is.
I'm saying, like, yo, the American divorce is on its way, fellas. You know, I mean, legit. I think it's on that fucking level right now. I'm with it, like 100%. I'm fucking with it.
The Republican Party can no longer claim to be the party of morality, ethics, foreign policy, fiscal prudence, or rule of law. And the political faction in the United States that cares about rule of law the most is that one.
I'm sorry for the ads. I apologize, man. Like, yo, OBS browser don't let you put the extensions in.
And the military. That will reshape American politics for the next generation. Now, it's not done. It's not gelled. We are 5 years into what is usually a 10 to 12-year transition. And this is not our first one. This is our 7th one. We will get through this. It will be loud. It will be messy. It will be uncomfortable. But we've done this before. But I've got 2 concerns. Number one, short term. We're probably, some version of this is going to settle within the next year because that's the time frame for us selecting candidates for the primaries for the midterms. And if Trump and his allies dominate that process, he will bring to the fore a series of absolutely unelectable candidates across the country. And that will be most likely the end of the party in its current form. Some version of this happened to the Democrats in the last transition, and they were out of power for 12 years. Too soon to know for sure, but if you feel strongly about this one way or the other, now is the time to start getting involved in politics, because it's almost too late.
I mean, I kind of see the same type of thing. I really do. You know, I mean, the reason why I say that is because, like, the business community is utmost of importance. And, you know, I mean, like, they're going to be the ones who are going to put forward the fucking candidates and put the money behind them. Right. And, you know, if the Republicans are trying to run individuals who are going to tear this motherfucker down, they're going to fight tooth and nail to stop them. But I'll be real. I kind of just want it all torn down. Shit, like, fuck the bullshit.
Second problem, longer term. Like I said, this is the 7th time we've done something like this. On 3 of the 6 that came before, the people in the political middle became so disenchanted with the process that they just checked out. And they left it to the wackadoos on both sides to make all the decisions, and we got into wars on 3 of the 6. I'd rather not do that. Maybe that's just me. Although if we could do like a Spanish-American war, that was a lot of fun, so who knows? Okay. If you look at what's going on, the Democrats are, well, the Biden Democrats specifically, are making a bid for including the business community in their coalition. And if you look at who's at the helm and who's in the cabinet, they're not being sloppy about it. The president gets to appoint about 8,000 people. Unlike Trump, who never even appointed half of them, Biden is already like 3/4 of the way through, and he's only appointed 1 person from the hard left to any position at all. The business community has noticed that. That, in theory, is the new Democratic Party. But again, it has not gelled yet. So love it or hate it, now's the time. All right. Dare we take questions on politics? How much time we got? 5 minutes. Holy crap. Okay. You guys want me to talk about Iran real quick? People get hopped up on Iran. Okay, we'll make it quick. Okay, this is Rassi. He's the new president. He just got his new job last month. He was railroaded in. Everybody else was basically told they couldn't run. This was the conservatives making a power play. Not a desperate one, not a stilted one. They have completely taken over. So any meaningful dissension that you thought there might have been within Iran society, which could allow for regime change, no. It's like that game is over for at least the next 20 years. Now, Rassi specifically is, well, he's not shy. You guys remember back in 1988 when information leaked out that they were hanging people from forklifts? Like 30,000 of them? That's him. Been in the judiciary since then, loves to execute people. Remember the Green Revolution from a few years ago? Yeah, he's the guy who executed them. So there is like no light between him and the clerical establishment, or especially the supreme leader. So the people of that cut are fully in charge of all institutions of government and have either eliminated everyone or intimidated them into doing nothing for the foreseeable future. Does that mean that I think Iran's about to cause us trouble? Absolutely not. 4 things. 1, Trump, the maximum pressure campaign worked, crushed the economy. And the people in the Biden administration who were talking about maybe regenerating some sort of nuclear deal, this is not the Obama administration. Now, what happened under Obama is these people who wanted a deal let me back up. So the people who came up with the idea of the deal back under Obama's term said that, if we want to leave the Middle East, we have to do one of 2 things. Number 1, we have to nuke the whole place to a glow so it never causes a problem again. Or number 2, we have to establish a regional balance of power so they keep each other occupied so we don't have to worry about it. So unless, Mr. President, you want to send about 1,000 nuclear weapons into the Middle East, just hope that they all go off and one doesn't get lost, you need to bring Iran back in some way so it can balance the other players. That was the crux of the deal. So Obama heard it, thought it was great, but then he took the deal plan from the people who came up with it and gave it to his team of incompetents. The people who came up with the deal, they are now Biden's team. That's Sullivan. That's the new Secretary of State. And so they knew that what was going on under Obama was dumb. They saw the mistakes that were made. They realize that Donald Trump changed the game with his sanctions program, and that's where they're starting from. These are smart people.
I told some motherfuckers last night in the stream, I said, Joe, look, you know what I mean? Like, you got to understand that, like, legitimately, like, what's going on here is that, like, Donald Trump, you know what I mean? Like, fucking, and Joe Biden, same policies. They continue forward with this same shit. And people just don't understand this. Like, they're like, what are you talking about, man? Like, it's fucking crazy. It sounds like some insane stuff to me. I'm like, yo, he's saying it in a different way that you don't like. You know what I mean? You're being told not to like it, and you don't really understand what the fuck is going on. Like, that's why Trump came out and he's like, yo, why are y'all anti-vaccine? I started the fucking program to make them. Like, the fuck is wrong with you? Bruh. Y'all don't get it. You know what I mean? It's all just giant. It's a clown show for y'all motherfuckers, and you don't understand that the jab was gonna come under Trump or whether it was under Biden. It didn't fucking matter. Like, yo, just I'm sorry. Let's keep rocking. Let's keep rocking.
Second, here we have a religious map. So this dark green, that's primarily Iran. This is the Shia. For the last 20 years, the Iranians have shattered everything to the west, Iraq and Syria specifically. They're basically stateless areas. They're in collapse. And the Iranians have lost control of it because Iran stirred up sectarian tensions. But every group that Iran worked through was in the minority. Well, the majority's pissed. We've already seen a lot of Iranian agents just getting killed in the streets. They've lost control of all this. It's become complete chaos. Second, we left Afghanistan. Closed down Bagram last week. We'll be completely gone within a month. Before 2001,
God damn, man. Like, yo, I'm sorry for y'all motherfuckers that actually still gotta watch ads and shit. I haven't done this in forever. Like, legit.
before September 11th, back in 1999, the Iranians almost invaded Afghanistan, wiped out the Taliban. We talked them out of it. Whether that was a good idea or not, we can leave to history. But the Taliban and the Shia hate each other more than words can convey. And while Americans are going, oh, no, the Taliban's coming back. Oh my God, they're so scared. So scared. There are already 3 million Afghan refugees in Iran, and that's in good times. Their economy can't take another million, much less the 10 that are likely to come. And that's before you consider the Saudis, who are chilling on their side of the desert that the Iranians can't cross, just throwing money and gasoline into every problem the Iranians have. Iran is discovering the same thing that the Russians are discovering. You remove the Americans from the equation and you have to deal with your neighborhood yourself. And that ends badly. So I got to talk about Russia real quick because I love this photo. Russia has spent the last 50 years stirring up trouble for the United States, especially since we went into Iraq and Afghanistan. But now that we're leaving and now that we're not really even interested in Europe anymore, they're realizing the game really has changed. They've tried to get the US out of things for the last 70 years. They were the target of the Cold War. And now that they're getting what they want, they realize, oops. And now that we're gone, they all have to think for themselves. They all have to act for themselves. And because the US always had its finger in 1,000 different pies, we could never focus fully on Russia. But the Finns can, and the Swedes, the Japanese, the Germans, and the Poles. So they've gone from dealing with one distracted superpower to 30 hyper-vigilant middle powers. And their demography is collapsing. They will never have more skilled workers than they have now. And it's going to get worse in every single year. They haven't trained a full crop of engineers in 30 years. That means their youngest full cadre are now in their late 50s. You will be the last president of Russia, and we will all live to see it. Okay.
I think we're going to end it there. You know what I'm saying? Like, yo, I hope y'all enjoyed. I mean, like, it was most definitely interesting. And I love this type of shit. It fucking just, it fascinates me to no end. I know, like, a lot of y'all consider this type of stuff boring and whatever, blah, blah, blah. But if you got questions, you know the deal. Put them in the comment section. Like, yo, we can have these type of discussions. You know how it operates. Timepiece with Pnoid News. You know the deal. Like, share, and subscribe. Hit that Patreon link. Support channel. You know what I mean? If you like to see more content like this, you know how it works. Join the Discord. Links in the description. Buy a t-shirt. Links in the description. Peace, you like one. Later.